Oh wait, what does this mean? I couldn't help but let out a surprised murmur. I was in a state of confusion, not fully grasping the situation. But then it dawned on me. This was my ticket to freedom. The more I thought about it, the happier I felt. My life was about to begin anew. It turns out I'm the type whose efforts pay off later in life. I'm Emily, a 38-year-old housewife. My husband, Robert, is 3 years older than me and works in an office. We met when Robert visited my workplace on business. Surprisingly, Robert and I shared the same last name, which was particularly unusual because it wasn't common. This coincidence sparked our initial conversations. One day, we discovered that we came from the same hometown. I had moved to the city for college, so this shared background brought us even closer. Talking to him every day quickly became the highlight of my day. Eventually, Robert asked me out to dinner, and that's when our relationship really took off. After several dates, Robert confessed his feelings, and we started dating. Both of us had a strong desire to marry, so it didn't take long for marriage to become a realistic prospect. We got married after 6 months of dating. We didn't have a wedding ceremony, though. At the time, my dad fell ill, and the mood wasn't right for a celebration, so we decided to skip it. Since I was quite busy, Robert took care of the marriage paperwork. After we got married, Robert requested that I quit my job to focus on household duties. Influenced by his mother, Isabel, who was a housewife, Robert was resistant to the idea of a working woman. I had always dreamed of my job, so giving it up was something I struggled with. I hinted at this to Robert, but he was unwavering in his decision. He firmly insisted I become a housewife. Swept up in the thrill of marriage, I eventually consented, despite my boss's sarcastic remarks about how unusual it was these days. I resigned, and so began my married life with Robert, living just the two of us in an apartment. We thought about building a house but decided to wait until we had children. Although we wanted kids, they didn't come as easily as we had hoped. In the first year of our marriage, something unexpected happened. We started living with Robert's mother, Isabel, making it a 3-person household. Initially, Isabel had refused to live with us, so in a way, I felt relieved, thinking we could maintain a comfortable distance. But suddenly, she proposed moving in. Apparently, Isabel had accumulated substantial debts due to gambling and had become desperate. She had to sell her own house, leaving us no choice but to accept her without any prior discussion. Suddenly, a large amount of her belongings arrived at our home. When I expressed my shock to Robert, he casually said, "It's a good opportunity since Mom is getting old. If she fell at home alone, nobody would find her. And since she eats so little, our expenses won't increase much." I was now resigned to spending my days with Isabel. I absolutely hated that idea. It made me wish I could go back to work. When I mentioned this to Robert, he became aggressive, saying, "Are you mocking me by working? Do you find it amusing to spread the word that my income alone isn't enough for us?" In this day and age, dual-income households are not uncommon, and everyone around me works. That's why they can afford stylish clothes, something I envied. With my mere $100 monthly allowance, I could only afford high school-level cosmetics. My clothes were limited to sale items from local clothing stores. I was growing increasingly frustrated with this lifestyle. Before marrying, I loved fashion and worked in a magazine's editorial department. Since getting married, I hadn't been able to wear the clothes I liked. I wasn't even trusted with the household finances and was handed $100 a week. That was all I had to manage our living expenses, including food. Honestly, $100 a week was tough for living expenses. No matter how many times I brought this up to Robert, he would refute it, saying, "I know someone who manages on $80 a week. It's not that it's entirely impossible. I could make do by preparing budget meals." But then the complaints were tremendous. That's right, Robert subjects me to emotional abuse. If we were saving money, maybe it would be tolerable, but Robert doesn't save at all. Indulging in excursions. He's reckless with both money and time. It's not uncommon for him to miss the last train after a night out and return by taxi. He plays golf whenever he pleases. On top of that, any mistakes he makes somehow become my fault. If he oversleeps, it's blamed on me. If he loses a document, I'm the first to be suspected. My friends can't hide their surprise at Robert's behavior. Since we got married, his personality seems like that of a different person. I feel like a hired housekeeper in my own home, and with Isabel's arrival, I feel even less alive. However, Isabel had nowhere else to live. She moved into the room we had kept open for future children. From that day, my hellish days began. Firstly, Isabel wakes me up early in the morning. She wakes up at 4 o'clock a.m. every day and tells me to wake up even earlier. In the cold winter, it's expected that a housewife wakes up before everyone else to warm up the house. For some reason, it's seen as natural for a housewife to sacrifice herself for the family. Despite not having chosen this housewife life for myself, this mindset is imposed on me. Then, Robert and I drink almost every night, discussing how I am an incompetent wife. The cost of the alcohol is included in my $100 weekly allowance, making living impossible. Talking to Robert about this gets me nowhere, so I end up using my savings from before I was married. It's becoming increasingly depressing even now. When I consulted my mom, she said, "You have to accept it for now. Bad things will return to those who do evil. Just live each day honestly, believing that if the worst comes to worst, you can always divorce, and he'll be a stranger. I won't be around forever either." As I listened earnestly, she continued, "Don't worry, Emily. You're the type whose efforts will pay off later. You've always ended up lucky in the end, ever since you were a child." I've always trusted my mom's words. Since childhood, whenever I went to her with problems, she never gave me the answers I wanted, but somehow she always managed to convince me. Being an only child, I worry about my mom, who lives far away. And since my dad hasn't fully recovered from his illness, I can't be at ease. However, I lack the freedom to visit my parents' home easily. When people hear all this, they wonder why I don't just get a divorce. I would probably think the same if I heard it from a friend, but there's a reason for it. It's Robert's duality. In front of Isabel, Robert acts like a tough, domineering husband. He even gives me orders and, as I mentioned before, subjects me to emotional abuse. But when it's just the two of us, he's different. He tries to listen to my opinions and cries when I say I'm at my limit with this lifestyle. He always says, "You're the only one I can show my weak and lousy side to. If I didn't have you, I might as well end my life." Robert has an unstable side, so I can't take these words lightly. In the end, things always remain ambiguous, and our fights fizzle out. But I have nothing but dissatisfaction with this life. I can't imagine ever getting used to a life where I'm tormented by Isabel all day. Moreover, we live in an apartment that's not particularly spacious. It's a 2-bedroom unit where I've been living since my single days. I can't avoid seeing them constantly. Then, a major incident occurred. My banking card went missing. I was sure it was there just the day before, and there were no signs of my room being ransacked. At first, I thought it was my mistake and searched desperately, but the place where I keep my important things is always the same, so it was strange. Then something suspicious happened. Isabel suddenly bought an expensive bag. Frankly, there's no way she could afford such a thing. She usually gambles away her pension as soon as she gets it. I suspected it was my money, but it was hard to confront her directly, so I consulted Robert. "I think the money for Isabel's bag might be from my account," I said. Robert looked at me as if I were foolish and became aggressive. "Are you saying there's a thief in the family? Are you trying to blame Mom so you can extort more money from me? Cut it out." I was astounded. It took a lot of courage to even bring up this topic. Money issues are delicate, and I knew it would definitely worsen our relationship. There had been a few times before when money disappeared, but I had endured it. Isabel, after all, had fled to my house with no money due to her gambling. I didn't want to suspect her, but I couldn't help it, and Robert adamantly defended her. Having no one else to suspect, I decided to report the missing banking card to the bank. I had no intention of making a big deal out of it if she had just told me honestly, but now I had no choice. When I said I would go to the bank the next day to check the withdrawal history, Isabel, as expected, started to panic. "Don't do that. You probably just misplaced it yourself and forgot. It's better not to embarrass yourself like that," she insisted, clearly not wanting me to see the records. But with my banking card missing, that was the only way to check. Finally, Isabel gave in. "Fine, I admit it. I just borrowed a little. I was going to pay it back with my pension next month." I couldn't stay silent any longer. This was theft, and it was outrageous to report borrowing money after the fact. What made me even angrier was what followed. Hearing this, Robert laughed. "Mom, if you were in trouble, you should have just told me. Why did you buy a brand-name bag?" Isabel replied, "Well, I'm meeting old friends next week, like a reunion. I can't go looking shabby, right?" So I bought it. I'll sell it after the reunion and turn it into cash. It somehow turned into a laughing matter. I couldn't find anything funny about it, mother and son taking it lightly and laughing without any apology. I had reached my limit. Our relationship had always been strained. They constantly criticized the food I cooked, and they never helped clean, yet they arrogantly complained about me being an incompetent wife. I could hear Isabel gossiping about me on the phone with her friends, badmouthing me. I no longer felt the need to defend such people. At that moment, it felt as if I had broken free from some sort of brainwashing. That night, Robert said to me, "I'll cover the cost of Isabel's bag, so don't make a big deal out of it. I know she feels bad about it." His attitude gave me goosebumps. It was so different, it made me suspect he had a split personality. I had made up my mind, I'm leaving this house. Once I decided, I knew I had to act quickly. I started looking for a job. I didn't care about their complaints anymore. To live my life my way, I had to cut ties with them. I went to the Employment Development Department to get a referral. I needed identification documents, but I didn't have a driver's license. I wasn't on Robert's insurance plan and had been paying my insurance premiums myself. I'm not proud of it, but I rarely get sick. I hadn't been to the hospital since getting married. Robert manages my insurance card, so I didn't want to ask him for it. This is because I was planning to tell him only after I'd secured a job. So I went to get my resident registration. Looking at the resident registration, I was shocked. Wait, what does this mean? My voice escaped me unintentionally. For some reason, I was still listed as unmarried. The address was correct, our current apartment, but it was originally my apartment, so there was no need for an address change. Confused by the situation, I couldn't quite understand what was happening. I impulsively asked the municipal office staff, "Does this mean I'm not married?" The staff responded with a troubled expression, understandably so. They had probably never been asked such a strange question before. But once it was confirmed, the situation changed completely. I could be free. I looked over the document again and again, feeling happier each time. Could such an unbelievable miracle really happen? My life was about to begin anew. I returned home from the municipal office feeling light-footed and quickly arrived home. As soon as I got home, Isabel demanded, "I'm hungry. Make dinner quickly." I no longer needed to do that. In fact, I never needed to. But if I left right then, Isabel's lack of understanding would just be annoying, so I decided to wait until Robert came home. I served Isabel some reheated convenience food, which she ate while complaining. Everything about them felt repulsive now that I realized they were strangers to me. That night, I told them I had something to discuss and asked for their time. Robert, annoyed, said, "Emily, I'm tired from work. Can this wait for a day off? Don't make me fit into your idle schedule." Isabel chimed in, "Exactly, it's probably some trivial matter anyway. Make it quick. I don't want to waste even 5 minutes on you," glaring at me. Their attitude was only acceptable for now, but for me too, it felt like a waste of time, so I got straight to the point. "Let's get to the main topic. This house is under my contract. Both of you need to leave." They were stunned. Then Robert laughed. "Wait, Emily, did you hit your head or something? What are you talking about? You know Mom has already sold her house, right? Are you saying you'll make Mom homeless? Are you out of your mind?" He laughed, but his eyes weren't smiling. Isabel retorted, "How dare you say that? You're only able to live because Robert works, and you can't even be grateful. If that's the case, you should be the one to leave." Robert and Isabel clearly didn't grasp the situation, so I decided to explain everything from the beginning. I asked Robert, was there no issue with the marriage application? He claimed ignorance. When I revealed it wasn't processed, Isabel turned pale. But Robert still didn't understand. He said, "I think I mentioned something, but I didn't want to hear it, so I left. But it's the city hall's fault for not processing it, not mine." Again, it was his usual habit of blaming others. I couldn't deal with it anymore. Isabel then said to me, "It's not too late, right? Just submit the marriage application again. You have it, don't you?" I replied, "I have been taken for granted too much. There's no way I'm going to marry now, especially not in such a foolish way. And this apartment is in my name. You two are just parasites. That's why I'm telling you to leave." Realizing what I meant, Isabel got angry. "You are committing marriage fraud, living off my son's money while not being married. It's scary." It was all nonsensical. I told them again that this was a waste of time. Finally understanding, Robert said, I get what Emily is saying. Maybe Mom has been too harsh on Emily. Mom should leave and we'll start over. I'll pay for Mom's moving expenses. Unexpectedly, they started falling out. Isabel retorted, This mess is because of you, Robert. You are irresponsible. It's your fault. They started arguing. I had no interest in their family quarrel. I said sorry, but this is a waste of time. I'm not blaming either of you. I just dislike you both. So could you please argue after moving out? If not, I'll leave. Upon hearing this, Isabel happily said, You're leaving. Then Robert and I can live here, right? Repeating her thoughtless remarks. I didn't want them to know my address anymore, so I had no intention of continuing to live there. I planned to manage with my savings for a while, so living alone wouldn't be a problem for me. The next day, I started looking for a new place and a job. When I told a friend from a previous company, they laughed and helped me out. Thanks to my friend's help, I was rehired at my previous company. The people there knew about my former husband, Robert, and the news spread quickly, even reaching his workplace. Robert was apparently disliked at his company, and the bad rumors about him spread so much that he couldn't stay there anymore. He voluntarily resigned 3 months later. The day after our big fight, I quickly found a new place and moved out. I also canceled the lease on the apartment that was in my name. Robert and Isabel left as if fleeing. Afterward, the two prideful individuals started living in a property that was beyond their means. Their lifestyle, without any savings, soon collapsed. They ended up living in a 40-year-old apartment. Losing his job made life difficult for Robert. His pride, which he had always flaunted at the company, was severely damaged. He seems to have become a recluse, probably living a life of drinking despite having no money. Once, I saw him in a grocery store parking lot, holding a can of beer. I was truly grateful that we weren't actually married. Now, they're living off Isabel's small pension. As for me, I'm now employed full-time and enjoying my work. It's a stark contrast to the days when I lived on a $100 monthly allowance. I can now invest in myself, and every day is enjoyable. I've been assigned to work on a magazine for women in their 30s. I'm so happy now, but those hellish days feel like a distant memory. Every day is fun, and it feels like a new life has started. I hope to continue living days that bring me joy.